Hello, good
Hello.
afternoon. Hi, Paola.
Hi.
Today is the 25th of June. It is a little bit after 4 in the afternoon here in Germany. And with us, we have Paola. Paola is our story number 16 in this series. Paola, let's start. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Hi. So I'm a 21-year-old student. I'm originally from Italy, but I came here 3 years ago in the UK, in the northeast of England, to study at university. I'm a physics with astrophysics student, and yeah, I've been here for quite a while. So yes, this is me.
This is you. And do you like? I'm assuming you're liking it because how?
Yeah, I'm enjoying my time here in the UK. It's quite different from Italy, although we're always, let's say, in Europe, but I can still see there are quite differences, especially in the weather. But finally, summer is come here. But yeah, I'm enjoying my time here, and I'm building my life here, and I have friends, and yeah, I'm settled down here.
Settle down. Oh, that's good. And where in Italy are you from? North or
So
south?
yeah, I'm from the northeast as well. I'm from Veneto, from Padova, so that's near Venice.
Perfect. Yeah, so quite different from where you are right now, but
Yeah.
like you said, you're settling down, so it's really nice.
Yeah.
So before we really start the interview, just tell me one thing. How has it changed right now in the last few months for you? Was there, you just told us that you have been studying, you're a student there, but what were you doing before the pandemic and then right now and during? Did you have to, I don't know, were classes stopped, or what change was there?
So we were in the middle of semester two, in my case, of my second year of university.
Mhm.
So the semester had started already in January, and classes, lectures were interrupted in the middle of March. So that's exactly the middle of the semester for us, since we have exams in May. We moved everything online.
Mhm.
Um, lecturing moved online, and we had to attend online classes and everything, and eventually also exams moved online. I completed my exams in May, and now the academic year is finished.
Okay.
The way, yeah,
No, no, sorry, you were saying?
the way life changed, obviously, this was a major change because I spent my whole day usually on campus around people because I'm a quite sociable person. I was obviously from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on campus because I also am part of a boxing club. So I would have trainings in the evening. So obviously that changed as well, as we had to stop that as soon as rules changed here in the UK. Um, yeah, I'd say that for sure.
Okay, but from the perspective of what you were studying, so the lectures and the courses and the work and the homework, the main change was that everything went online. It's not that something stopped taking place, correct? You still had all the lessons, all
Yeah,
the
so
exams.
we continued lectures online. Nothing was interrupted.
Okay.
For my course, we still had exams. However, for other courses, the year just finished, ended just in May, without exams or assignments. Other people changed type of assignment, from maybe having to have presentation to only having to write and submit an assignment. However, because my course is a different kind of course. Let's say you have to have exams, you cannot write assignments on physics. I mean, you could, but we had to still submit the exams and still getting grades back and all of that stuff. So it really depended on the course, because my university really looked at the individual subjects and courses rather than getting a more general decision. Yeah, I would say that. So to be fair, under one point of view, yes, it's been more of a challenge to having to do everything online, and we had less of the support from the academic staff online. However, I must say I'm glad I had all of this, because my time was spent studying and preparing for exams, and I wasn't there doing nothing and feeling all the pressure of being inside a house, was maybe someone that didn't have exams or assignment might have felt this situation way more.
Hmm. Well, I take two things from what you just told us. First of all, it makes sense how your university did it, to look into the degree, the courses, the subject, and then decide, okay, what plan of action makes a lot of sense, and it went well. And then second thing, obviously more about you, is what a nice way of seeing it. Very positive to see it. You know what? I have to study. I like studying. It's what I have to do, and I'm just gonna do that. And you're right. It really was a way to not be so anxious, right, with the
Yeah,
situation.
because I think in the end, the key, mostly during the harshest times of lockdown, I mean, was maintaining a routine and still getting up at 8 a.m. and, getting dressed and attend the lessons, and still planning your study, and, having something to look forward to, having a deadline to work for, definitely helped me, besides the stress, but that's inevitable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm actually thankful for that.
Yeah. It's needed. It was needed, and it is needed. Nice. I like it. Now, tell me a little bit. So I think it'd be nice if you could speak about both the UK and Italy, because it's a nice contrast, right? To see you're living in the UK, you're from Italy, and unfortunately, as we all know, Italy was one of the worst hit countries, one of the first worst hit countries, and the UK also has not been doing very well in general. And so it'd be really interesting to see your perspective for both things. So as a first question, I was wondering if you could tell us, what is it that is happening right now, both in the UK and Italy? What is the topic that people are talking about? What's on the news? What are the concerns? So what is really happening in the UK and Italy? Just give us a look.
So at the moment, in the UK, actually 2 days ago now, the Prime Minister gave new instructions for lockdown easing rules. So now he announced that on the 4th of July, main activities, non-essential activities will open again. So such as pubs, such as cinemas, such as hairdressers, and so on. So all them activities. Also shops, non-essential shops opened again on the 15th. So that's 10 days ago. So I'd say this is the main rule. And another rule he allowed to ease is, first of all, the 2-meter rule got changed from 2 meters to 1 meter, where it's not possible to keep the 2 meters distance between people. Okay. And he also allowed people from 2 different households to meet indoors, as before you could only meet outdoors, up to a group of 6 people from 6 different households, but obviously keeping distance. So this is the main news that's getting discussed right now here in the UK. As per Italy, these changes happened a while ago. I'd say now a month ago, actually. Um, so everyone's pretty much back at normal life. Well, we shall say the new normal. The latest news is especially for my region, because now in Italy everything works more within rather than the whole country. So within my region, as there was the compulsory rule to wear the mask outside as well, now the rule is to wear it compulsory only inside, and it's not compulsory anymore to wear outside. They still suggest to keep 1 meter distance, although that's very argumentable that whether people keep it or not. And also you can travel within regions, so that was a thing that before it wasn't allowed. So I'd say these are the main things that are going on in the country.
Okay, and just to stay for a little bit with Italy, now that it has been a couple of weeks that people can go from one region to another, how does it work? Do they have to inform someone that they're going to another region, or do they have to write it somewhere, say something, or they just go and come back as they please without saying
Yeah.
anything?
So the rule that you, as I know,
Yeah.
the rule that you have to write where were you going, why, and so on was active, let's say, till like a month and a half ago. Now you can travel just for leisure, you know, go to the seaside or whatever, without having to write any like self-certification. But yeah, it's important to say that before in Italy, it was compulsory to write it every time you were going out. Yes, whilst here in the UK, no one can travel technically unless you're returning to your original household, say to meet with the family and stuff. No one can travel to go to another household, um, and most importantly, you do not have to, and you were never required to write any certification down. So ever, not even at the beginning of lockdown, they just rely on the self person, to be honest. So when it was prohibited to go, say, to the seaside, they were literally just relying on people, even during the strictest rules here in the UK.
Okay, so more, I trust you, go for it, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
Okay. And well, we can talk about that afterwards. Okay, I think that's what about shopping? You mentioned that in the UK the stores have been open. Have you gone shopping yet or no?
No, I haven't. To be fair, I was out walking by near the city center the first day they opened shops, and when I saw the main road being so crowded, as if it was like Christmas shopping time, I just I didn't want to put myself through that. I cannot even imagine how many hours you would have to wait, because there still are queues outside and, you know, social distancing and everything. So no, I have not been shopping. I just go to essential shops and that's about it.
Okay. So would you say you're more careful about not going shopping because of the quantity of people and the waiting, or because of the quantity of people and a little bit of feeling uncomfortable because of the virus? Or is it a combination?
Yeah, I'd say a combination for sure. Um, Having not been in that situation, I wouldn't be too sure I could be in the middle of such a crowd and be calm. For sure, it's gonna feel weird to be in such a crowd after 3 months of everyone being in their own households. Um, so yes, for sure there would be some discomfort, but mainly it's because I don't think it's wise now to first of all like have such gatherings, and also unless it's essential, because that would be literally just, oh, I want to go shopping, unless I really need a pair of jeans. I don't really need it, so I can avoid it. Yeah.
Hmm. That's I think the same as you. It's a good way of thinking. There's some things we do need, but some others that it's not worth it. At least not yet, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And moving on, still staying with both the UK and Italy, but moving on from what is currently happening now to what has happened up to now. Can you just like give us a little bit of information about the history of what were the first measures that the UK took in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19, and also what were the measures that Italy took? So yeah, just tell us what has happened in the last few months that meant more to you, that you remembered, or
Yeah.
just obviously not everything, but yeah, just tell us about both countries.
Well, first of all, I will remember at the end of February, I was meant to go to Barcelona on a trip just with my Italian friends because they had finished exams just in February. So we had planned this trip. I was gonna meet them there, flying from Manchester, and meet them in Barcelona. They were gonna fly from Venice. So the situations in Italy were starting to get worse. There were several situations, both in my region, Veneto, especially in my city, Padova, and more in the area of Milan. So my friends started to be concerned. Here, it wasn't a thing yet, but first of all, I didn't want to go to Barcelona by myself because they were starting to say having second thoughts about traveling during these times where it was highly not recommended to travel. So they canceled their flight, and at that point I decided I would just not take the plane. I said I don't think it's wise of me travel when it's not essential. Yes, I really want to visit Barcelona, but there had started to be the first cases also in Spain, brought from some Italian people, I reckon. Um, so to avoid perhaps having to quarantine in Spain or in the UK once I returned, to avoid all of that, because I really wanted to still continue to go to lectures, I just didn't get on that plane. And that was the first sign for me that something was not normal. It's not normal that I have to give up traveling. Never have I ever done something like that unless I was sick. So that was an alarm. And then 2 weeks after, my parents, so we're talking about the weekend of the 12th of March, my parents were meant to come visit me here in the UK. It was also for my dad's birthday. And so the weekend before, they had started to having quite a lot of cases in my region and around Milan. And my parents had contacted the embassy and asking, is it safe for us to travel? Is it okay if we travel? When we land in the UK, do we have to quarantine? And the embassy said, for now, there are no limitations. So I would say, yes, you can go. So they had continued to planning on coming here until I'd say 5 days before the 12th. So I don't know, like the weekend of the 7th or something like that. Um, and then they put in, so in Italy they call it red zones. They had put my region and all the northern regions in these red zones. So it was a more localized lockdown. They had canceled their flights, and so I obviously was heartbroken. I hadn't seen my family since Christmas time, so I really wanted them to come here. I was heartbroken then, and then that just after that weekend, so say the 15th of March, our a country leader had a talk and declared that the whole country in lockdown, and I was following all the news at any time of the day. I would connect, live stream anything, like read anything, and just I was heartbroken. It seemed like an apocalypse because nothing like that ever happened whilst I was alive. So it was very weird for sure. Imagining people that I know, my friends, my family, having to be locked in a house at that time, it was something weird to even imagine. I cannot even think about leaving something like that. I would call every time home. I even did care packages to send to my best friends, like, you know, do a face mask at home, or little sweets and treats from the UK, you know, to cheer them up. It was very, very weird for sure. And I started to feel self-conscious here as well. I thought, why are all the people here calm when such a drastic thing is happening in my home country? And we're not talking about Asia. We're not talking about China anymore. We're talking about Italy. That's a 2 hour and 45 minutes flight. I was very concerned about seeing all people just calm. And I was obviously worried about the situation home. So I started, you know, taking my distance from maybe like big social gatherings. And eventually, I also started practicing sport. As I mentioned earlier, I'm doing boxing, which is also a very like contact sport. I just stopped going. I'm also in the committee, and I suggested, look, shouldn't we maybe stop this? And everyone told me, well, look, until the government tell us that it's no longer safe, I don't see why we should. We're in a different country. I'm really sorry for you and your family in Italy. I hope you're keeping well, but we're gonna continue training. So at that point, I decided I'm responsible for my actions. I try and send, like, talk with people who wanted to listen to me. Good. Otherwise, I cannot force people. So I'd say those were the main differences at the beginning. And then when the whole UK went into lockdown, I was still surprised in the UK you could go out for walks. So at the beginning it was just a one time, once a day, technically for an hour, but again, no one would actually
just
know.
Checking.
Yeah. So you could still go out, whilst in Italy you couldn't even go out if it wasn't essential, or to walk your dog. But even then in Italy, they had to put a restriction, and also you can't walk further from home than 200 meters. So they even put like distance restrictions. Was here in the UK, you could have even walked till, like, I don't know, 40 kilometers if you wanted. So that was also a substantial, like, difference. And mostly no mask was ever, and not even now, compulsory outdoors or in shops. They're not compulsory, not even now. The only compulsory rule to wear mask is on public transport. And so I
Was
think those
that,
were.
sorry to interrupt, the masks in public transport in the UK, is that something now or from the beginning?
So from the beginning, you couldn't take public transport, and then they started saying if you can't avoid getting public transport, it is compulsory to wear a mask.
Okay.
So at the beginning, you couldn't technically get on public transport, or it was anyway highly not recommended. And now, yeah, it's compulsory, but you can get public transports if you need to. Uh, and yeah, I think so. About this hour walk outside, I think they did it also because they know that people need to go outside. It's good for your mental health, and here mental health is very much looked after. And I'm happy about that because they do care about that. And for example, just 3 weeks ago, people living alone were allowed here in the UK to form so-called support bubbles so that you could join another household. And this was before it was allowed two households to meet inside. And this was done because, maybe divorced parents want to meet the kid. And I think it's a very nice thing to look after these tiny, gestures of handling mental health. That does not mean it's significantly a good thing or not, because we can see that by not completely locking down the country, numbers are going down ways lower than compared to other countries like Italy, but also Spain and Portugal and all the other countries that had more strict lockdowns. But I do not understand also why, that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mentioned the numbers, so we already said today is the 25th of June, and Italy, so I know that it's a little bit too early right now. The Italian numbers for the 25th of June have not been made public yet. So these numbers are from yesterday, but as of yesterday, Italy has 239,410 cases, and it has 34,644 deaths. And the UK, the latest numbers that I see right now is that it has 307,980 cases. So quite like around almost 70,000 cases more than Italy. And it has 43,230 deaths, which is around 10,000 deaths more.
Yeah, I think, yeah, those are important figures for sure. And it highlights how the two countries decided to undergo a different lockdown. But it's also important to remember that cities may be more densely populated here. That for sure is not an ideal environment for such a virus. However, of course, I do think that, for example, not forcing a compulsory mask highly impacted these numbers, because that's one easy way to stop the spread of a virus, and yes, maybe it's good to allow still a walk outside even the harshest time of lockdown, but people, even though you're walking, they wouldn't move. So even now, so it's so easy to come into contact with someone, even just by walking. And yes, it's outdoors, and maybe there's less probability, but you never know what's the immune system of a person, and the health situation of someone. And I think even by just a simple gesture of a mask, that would help for sure. I think one of the reasons why they didn't put it as something compulsory here in the UK is because that's just me thinking, is because they were afraid of people complaining how much this would cost. Because yes, masks cost, and they are a cost. Um, so, for example, now they just put a guideline on how to make masks at home, and I think that's more so that they don't get complaints. Or yes, you have to wear a mask when wearing public transports, but we showed you how to make one at home. And so that way they make it more accessible, and they're showing how it's easier to make a mask, but still it's not compulsory. So
yeah, the mask topic it's a very complicated one because there's been different recommendations at different times from different countries, and even now we're almost in July, and you have some countries that recommend and show why it works, and you have other countries where unfortunately it's not that case. We know that one of the things that also created confusion is the fact that the communication around the reason why to use a mask was not always perfectly clear, in the sense that if I wear a mask, it's not that I am protecting myself, I am actually protecting you, Paola. And if you wear a mask, you're protecting me, because the mask will will make it possible that less of my spit, of my particles of my, when I speak, when I shout, when I sing, will go to you, especially, you know? So there's this thing that, okay, but if I'm not protecting myself, why am I wearing it? If you think that way, yes, it doesn't help you. But if you think,
yeah.
I wear it, and then Paula wears it, and then we're fine, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that. And of course, we cannot forget two things. The first one is that a mask is not a solution, as we know, as you even mentioned. It is helpful for sure. It is another way of preventing. It is part of the solution, but you still need social distancing. You still need to wash your hands. You still need to be careful. And if you're sick, never go out. You shouldn't even be wearing a mask, because you shouldn't be outside. You should be at home. And then the second thing that we know about this topic is, I don't know, it's really difficult, because I remember in Italy, when was it? I think March, April, when the I think April, or a little, maybe even May. I'm gonna check for next time. The Chinese Red Cross came to Milan, and they were very surprised that at that time the Italian population was not really wearing a mask all the time, and they recommended it also for public transport and so on, right? And they even mentioned, and it has been said over and over, the importance of wearing a mask, but wearing a mask properly. So that's the second thing. You wear it also covering your nose and your mouth. You don't put it around your neck. You don't put it, it's not sunglasses. Don't hold it around, because of hygiene, right? If I'm touching it all the time and up and down, it could even make it worse. So you have those two things. It's not a solution. It's helpful, but it's only helpful if you do it well. So
I think also another difference within lockdowns in these two countries is that, so if you were traveling in Italy, it was obviously compulsory to then isolate for 14 days. Ever since I think March, maybe April, but I reckon since March. And then they only recently said it was no longer compulsory to isolate if you were returning from abroad or coming from abroad. yeah, in Italy, it's no longer compulsory to isolate 14 days. This is just recent. They announced it just 3, maybe 4 weeks ago. Whereas in the UK, it was never compulsory. It was recommended. It was upon the individual to decide whether you wanted or you should isolate 14 days. And they made it compulsory only a month and a half ago, so like beginning mid-May. They said, yes, now it's compulsory. If you're traveling, when you're arriving in the UK, now you have to isolate 14 days. Mm-hmm. They made it compulsory way after, and only now, basically. So that's also essential, because we know that when traveling, you never really know what you get in contact with, and different places, different people, it's, yeah, that's a substantial difference, I think.
Yeah, and it connects very well with what we were saying, what you were saying about the masks. It was more what was compulsory in one country, what was a choice in another. Same thing with isolation and quarantine. And no, tell me.
I think either way, even though it was upon the individual here, a lot of things were upon the individuals. There was never a declaration when you were going out, and there was allowed only once a day to go out, and all of that being upon the individual. I think in general, because of the feeling of citizenship, I don't know how to say, here in the UK, a lot of people were following and are still following the rules and social distancing. So I think they didn't really need like a compulsory rule that they had to follow, like in Italy. In Italy they were going around with like microphones saying, we remember that you have to stay inside and can't go outside only for this and this reason. So, but I think that by doing so in Italy, by applying such strict rules, you also pass the message that this is a serious thing. When in your life this has ever happened, when you were never allowed to go out more than 200 meters away from your home to walk the dog. Okay, so it passes a message of importance, of urgency, because it's a global health crisis. And here, yes, it's upon the individual. Yes, perhaps a lot of people follow these rules, but a lot of people still think, yes, I'm in lockdown, but look, I can still do this. So perhaps it's not that dangerous, is it? Because there's no one actually stopping me. So it's also the message that comes across, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. And you just gave an excellent example how even given two different messages in two different situations in two different countries, they both have its pros and cons. So it's very difficult. But we do have to remember one important factor, that the UK was 2 weeks behind Italy. So that was, it has been shown, it was time lost. So you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that Italy was not in Asia. It was not Asia. Italy was in Europe, is in Europe, its neighbor. So for more reason, you as a country, you as a government, had the responsibility to look at that neighbor and say, okay, what do we know? What's happening? Let's see. And we even knew back then, it's not only now in June that we know, but we knew back then that there was a time difference. There was 2 weeks that of time, right,
Yeah.
between Italy and the UK, which is another reason for the numbers, right? You
Yeah.
mentioned the mask wearing was one reason. You mentioned isolation, quarantine when traveling was another reason. You mentioned also the type of lockdown was another reason, strict
Yeah.
versus lax.
Yeah.
And now this is another reason, time lost.
Yeah, I think it really is a shame seeing, obviously, also being Italian, you know, seeing such like also hurt and such a all those feelings that went around the countries, and you know all those pictures of all those military vans carrying all those coffins and bodies, and you know touching images and facts. Um, I think it's such a shame to know that then so many other countries had to go through this, all these deaths, when a country 2 weeks before went through that, had started going through that, and knowing that so many lives could have been, you know, saved in this country as in other countries by just following, you know, the example, or not
No,
following the
yeah,
example.
pay
um,
attention.
yeah, I, under, I understand that, of course, putting a country into a lockdown, yes, has a lot of side effects. Yes, mental health, and especially like economical side effects, and we all know that. And of course, in other countries, they were trying to avoid this. But I believe, you know, when you're facing such a big health crisis, like, yes, economics matter, but don't 42,000 lives matter? Mm, So yeah, it really is a shame because all that was meant to be done was just looking at what was happening in
Next door.
another country, just neighbor, and then you know avoid all of this.
Yeah, exactly. And also we don't know. There's so many things we don't know. This virus is new and we keep on learning more about it. There's more studies being done. There's more awful things being discovered. There's more hopes being, hopeful thoughts being like taken and had. But it's all too new. So
Yeah,
very, very difficult. And I could hear a little bit of your frustration at the beginning of the interview when you were telling me about your boxing experience, where you decided not to continue boxing, and you
yeah,
told your friends, you know, let's maybe we should cancel boxing because you are Italian, because you were seeing what was happening home.
yeah,
You knew how serious it was, but you were living in a different reality. It must have been really difficult, but at least thankfully you took care of yourself and said, okay, if you want to listen, you listen, and if you don't, I tried and I can't do much about it, right?
yeah. In the end, of course, no one will follow an advice from a random person like me more than your government. So it was for sure upon the government, and also upon the individuals, for sure. But only by reading the news you could have understood that
Yeah,
what was going on was not okay. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was very frustrating, and also it was, um, as I said, it was like living something like mm, surrealistic, like you know those things you read them in books, you see them in movies, but it never had happened to us, or at least to our generations, in first person. And so especially something that drastic. So uh yeah, for sure it was rather frustrating.
Frustrating. And talking about the feeling that you had, this surreal living, you were in another reality. Uh, when was it that you realized, so the exact moment you realized that this situation was bad, that it was more serious than what was been talked about? So obviously in the UK, by looking at Italy, you knew the UK reaction did not match with the reality. It was worse.
Yeah.
So let's just put the UK aside and just think of you and Italy. So end of February, you had your vacation. You were telling me that you were planning in Portugal, and then things started to get bad around the 23rd or so of February in the north of Italy. Was this what showed you that something was wrong when your flight got canceled, that you've always been traveling and never not gone anywhere except if you were sick, you were telling me? Or was there another moment that just made you stop and say, wait?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it was when I gave up going on holiday to Barcelona. The flight wasn't cancelled. It was me that just said, no,
No,
I
thank
won't
you.
I won't get on that plane. It wasn't yet that. I was thinking, yes, it's serious, uh, but I wasn't, because lockdown wasn't a thing. I couldn't even imagine that they could lock down a country. I knew it was a, like, you know, a health emergency, and it wasn't ideal to travel around, but I couldn't even imagine being locked in a house, and not even Italy. For sure, I started being more concerned reading that. Lectures at university in Italy start around the first week of March, and their lectures were cancelled. I was still going to lectures, and all my friends were saying, "Yeah, we're not going to lectures. We're not going into uni, and schools are cancelled. And high school, primary school, no one's going." At least for 2 weeks, and then it became 3 weeks, and then a month. So for sure, I'd say beginning of March. And then, of course, as I said earlier, I was following all the updates from the government through the live streams. And so for sure, it was around those 2 weeks that I realized. But, you know, it's a shame because obviously, as I said, here in the UK, they weren't realizing. But the thing is, my sister is Italian, obviously, and she lives in the UK as well. And as I said, I stopped going boxing, but I also stopped going to the gym because that was even worse, you know, using all those things. And I remember maybe she had started working from home. No, she wasn't working from home, but living in London, obviously you can the tube and stuff. So she was like, yeah, maybe I'll stop taking the tube. And I was like, yeah, maybe you should also stop going to the gym, you know? I don't think that's wise. And she was like, well, are you sure? I mean, I'm, I'll, I, I'll keep going. And then she stopped. Just a few days later, I told her that wasn't wise. And she started realizing as well. And I had realized earlier, as I said, the first week of March. And for sure, it hit me the first week of March. No, in Italy, having schools cancelled and university cancelled for such a long time, that never happens. Uh, you know, it rarely gets cancelled for the snow, especially in Padua, because we don't get that much snow, you know. So it rarely gets cancelled. So I thought, okay, that must be real. Reading all the messages, because I'm all in all my friends group chats saying, so do you think we should hang out this Saturday evening? And then being like, yeah, I don't think it's safe. Let's not go. And you know, it's weird. And you know, we're 21, we all go out.
Of course.
And so that was definitely when I realized.
When you realize, you know, I'm actually quite glad that you spoke a little bit about your sister, because while you were telling the story, I found it very interesting to see two very similar people. So you're both obviously from Italy. You're both living in the UK. So same parents, same surroundings in Italy and both in the UK. Same education or similar education, a similar or same interest, at least, you know, group of friends and everything that is normal. I don't even know how much older she is, but even just knowing those things and seeing that you both have different perspectives. So you realized before she did, and you thought of it as more serious before she did, a few days or even 1 week. And you still came from the same place and were in the same place.
Yeah.
So it depends not only on your surroundings, but on individually on who you are as a person.
Yeah, for sure on the individual, you know, when something is happening, even like general, I don't know, politics or national news, I'm always reading the news and the main ones. Okay, I wouldn't read Italian newspapers every day, never happens. But you know, the big events I do, and she just doesn't. But you know, they're just two different approaches. You know, I'm like, no, if something is happening, I need to know, you know, and she's just like, I don't need that kind of negativity, you know, and which is fair enough. But of course then, like in such a situation, of course then she started as well realizing. But yeah, it is interesting to know the difference within timing. uh, and I must say, like, I was talking to her before deciding whether to get on that plane to go to Barcelona 2 weeks before or not. And she was with me. She was like, no, maybe just don't. You know, yes, it's money that goes and you'll never get it back because it wasn't canceled, so I can't say anything. But she was like, you know, your health first. That doesn't mean that, because as I said, such a lockdown wasn't in a imaginary. It wasn't a thing. So it comes to only being real within. Okay, you shouldn't travel. That, like, that was the only, like, you know, precaution.
Caution.
But of course, when she saw all, for example, my parents' flights getting cancelled, of course, then she realized, well, perhaps that's not
That's not.
good.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, she took a couple of days, and she also had similar realization as you did, such as the
Yeah.
flight to Barcelona. But at the same time, where you, Paula, immediately thought boxing is not good, gym is not good, no, she thought, mm, well, you know, I don't know, why not?
Yeah.
And I find that interesting because yes, in this case, there's only a couple of days difference, and it's just in a couple of things. But if we look around at the experiences of different people in different situations in different countries of the world right now with this pandemic, there's a longer period of times. There's more differences than similarities, or the other way around. And so the choices that you make have more of an impact or faster consequences, let's say, no?
It really is upon the individual, because I have Italian friends here where I live here in the UK that still beginning of March traveled and went to Italy, in the north of Italy, to go skiing, you know. So it really is upon the individual, because you perfectly know that, especially in the north, that was when it all started. And in March, it was like the situation was already bad. You can't say it was January. Um, so it is upon the individual. And if you don't realize that, even by just taking that plane, yes, you're going in the mountains, so maybe you don't have such interaction. You're not in the middle of Milan, okay, but it's for sure helping spreading whatever is out there.
Yeah.
And if everyone keeps, you know, doing these little acts, then yes, we'll never end this pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. It's us, each of us, and we've seen it, and we are seeing it. Staying on this topic of us, so of the individual. Tell me, what are, based on your experience, based on the things we have spoken about today, and just your knowledge of what has happened in the UK and in Italy, and what is happening currently, which we spoke at the beginning of the interview of what are the things that are happening right now in the UK and in Italy. Can you tell us, can you tell me, what are your hopes? What are your concerns? What is it that you think is going to happen in the next few days, in the next few weeks, both in Italy and the UK, since we've been speaking about both countries?
Yeah.
And what is it that, of course, you don't want or you want to happen? Just what are you thinking?
So let's start with the things I don't want. So there are, funnily saying, let's say, my grandma has a great humor, and she was like, well, you know, it's a shame we can't see each other now because I survived this pandemic, but you know, I don't know if I'll be here for Christmas when we'll see again, because they say there's a second wave of the virus in October. And so let's see if I survive this one. Okay, she has a great humor, and that's amazing. But you know, I for sure I hope there won't be a second wave of all of this in October. I hope there won't be here in the UK, because I'm reading several articles of scientists saying, you know, the way lockdown is being eased in the UK is very risky, as we said earlier. And so they're saying probably there will be a second wave, and you know, it's upon the individual to like take responsibility for the actions. And yes, they're opening this and that, but that doesn't mean that you can go around and, you know, start hugging everyone as before. Unfortunately, not yet. So for sure, I'm hoping a second wave won't come, whether it's in 2 weeks, whether it's in 4 months. I really hope that, you know, research and all of that will help this to stop. So for sure, I'm hoping that. And I'm hoping that, I really am hoping that people here in the UK will be responsible from the 4th of July on, when they open everything, because again, I've seen so many pictures and videos and sent by friends, and you know, going around the social media, um, of when they opened, you know, activities in Italy, in bars and everything, and all partying like nothing had happened, like a pandemic wasn't out there. And so I'm hoping that at least in the UK it's better. I can't see it being better, because people are always people, and as soon as you give them freedom, you know, they think whatever. But I'm still hoping that here on the 4th of July onwards, they'll be responsible, hopefully. And so for the UK, I hope that. For Italy, I'll be traveling back next week, next Wednesday. So first of all, I'm hoping the flight is safe, and I can't deny I'm nervous, because I'm traveling for the first time after 7 months. That's gonna feel weird, as obviously I'm used to travel a lot, UK, Italy, but also abroad, and it's been so long since I've been on a plane. It's gonna be weird, but I hope that I can see people taking the right measurements, safety measurements, and social distancing. Because as per now, when I'm walking in the city, sometimes they walk past you, as I said before, as if they didn't know a pandemic is out there. you know.
Yeah.
Do you not read the news? And even if you don't read the news, you should know. uh, so I hope that when I travel, I notice that people are really taking care of this because it's important. And yeah, I think these are the hopes. I think within 2 weeks or maybe within the next month, things won't move as fast as the past 3 months, because the past 3 months things were changing basically every day, you know. One day they say a thing and the other day they say another thing, and so things were changing and moving exponentially, and figures and numbers and rules and constrictions and stuff. I think in the next few weeks things will change slowly, and I think this will be the new reality. I think we won't be able to live a normal life as in February, January, as soon as we think. I think they'll ease things, but very slowly. People think lockdown is ended, back to normal. But the thing is, we'll first live a different normal, and that's the thing. It'll be for sure weird. Also, it'll be very weird to go in a country where lockdown is not in action anymore, and going from I can have a walk with friends in the park here in the UK to you can go to the hairdresser in Italy. So it'll be for sure an impact.
Will be interesting. And I mean, your hopes are basically very clear, and so we take the opposite of your hopes and we understand your concerns.
Yeah.
So to finish, Paola, now that you have explained your hopes, you have made us understand your concerns, and you have told us what you think, I wanted you to now tell me if you could give a message to Paola, if you could give a message to the Paola that is going to be here in 14 days, the Paola that is in the future. What message would you give her?
I think first of course, hug your family. Of course, still, it's nice to be back to your home country, but still keeping that 1 meter distance and still following those rules still will make the difference, still will help numbers change and this going away, because in the end, that's what we all want. So to the Paola of the future, I say, yes, it's nice to be back. And yes, you can go to the beach now and get a tan. But even by just using that mask in the shop and wearing those gloves and keeping that meter distance is important. This would be it.
This would be your message. So enjoy your time with your family, hug them, but still be careful, be cautious.
Yeah.
It's a good message. It's a good message. And with these words, I thank you very much, Paola. It has been a pleasure, absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you once again for taking the time and giving us your experience, your perspective on both countries, two very different countries that responded very differently to the coronavirus pandemic. And yeah, I leave you. Have a wonderful evening. And
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I will speak to you in 14 days.
Thank you, for sure. Looking forward to that.
Same here. Ciao, Paola, and talk to you in 14 days.
Ciao.